Thank you all for coming this afternoon to share this special event with us today. My name is Stacy Reed-Barnes, and it's just an honor and privilege for me to be here today to share about advancing equitable policy centering youth of color. So if you will, I'm just going to share a little bit about me, and then we'll just get into it, okay? So again, like I said, my name is Stacy Reed-Barnes. I am the CEO and founder of Stacy's Joy Consulting, LLC. I have over 2 decades of international experiences where I devoted my life and career to empowering individuals with lived experiences of human trafficking, commercial sexual exploitation, and prostitution. I also work with people who have experienced domestic violence, mental health challenges, incarceration, and who experiencing or needing our reentry services. I'm an passionate peer mentor and survival leader professional. I'm an advocate on both the state and federal levels. I deeply value the importance of supporting others on their transformative journeys toward healing and personal development. And that's because I'm a survivor myself. I hold a master's degree in social work from Wheelock College, and I am on track to completing my doctoral of leadership psychology degree at William James College. In fact, this December. Yay.
Hey, to that.
I concurrently I serve as a lead clinician at Pine Street Inn Men's Stabilization and Shattuck Hospital. I'm a mobile crisis clinician, the best team for Bay Cove, Boston Medical Center, Solomon Carter Fuller, and I'm also a group facilitator for the Transformational Prison Project at at South Bay Correctional Facility for both men and women. I'm a consultant for REIT Incorporated, and I do a whole lot of other stuff too. So I just want to share a little bit about who I am and just welcome you and thank you for coming. And so next slide. And so today, next slide. There's somebody managing the slides. Okay. All right. So today I just want to give a little background. We will get into the meat and potatoes about equitable policy for our youth of color. And I just want to talk about like understanding the rich history and contributions of Black individuals in the communities and how it's essential if we are to advance equitable policy for our youth. You know, and it stems from the resilience shown from the civil rights movement to the cultural impact of the Harlem Renaissance. Black history is filled with moments of triumph and profound influence that is imperative for our future. Next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, so in order to talk about equitable policy, what happened? Something happened to my breakout room. Okay, here we go. So in order to talk about equitable policy, I felt like it was important to let folks know or get folks privy with the definition. So equitable policy refers to the development and implementation of rules and regulations that aim to reduce disparities by addressing the specific needs and challenges of marginalized groups. It ensures that all individuals have a fair access to opportunities, resources, and protections regardless of their background or identity. So when I think about equitable policy and I think about our youth and our communities here in Boston, I think about how we have always been marginalized or been a vulnerable population to where we are never treated fairly on any platform, right? And so this stems from like histories of oppression and suppression of people of color. And so the move now is to try to change the narrative of this for our people, for our youth, and so that they can have a promising future. Next slide. Next slide, please. So, and if we are to have a promising future, it would be nice to understand why it's important to appreciate the Black culture. So the purpose of this presentation is to discuss strategies and policies that prioritize the needs and voices of youth of color. Understanding Black culture is important because it helps us appreciate the rich contributions Black people have made to society. It fosters respect and empathy, promotes social justice by addressing historical and ongoing inequalities, and enriches our lives by broadening our perspectives and enhancing creativity for the future. So this is super important that we understand and that we appreciate our culture in order to move forward and keep that culture as some nuanced and respected and loved as we move forward for the betterment of our lives. I'm trying to, next slide. I'm trying to click it myself. My apologies for the little technical difficulties. All right, and so when we think about why it matters, well, it is crucial for fostering equity, addressing systemic disparities, and empowering future generations to thrive in a more inclusive society. Focusing on youth of color and policymaking is crucial because these young individuals are often face disproportionate challenges due to systemic inequalities in areas like education, healthcare, and economic opportunities. Policies that fail to address these disparities perpetuate cycles of poverty, injustice, and marginalization, hindering the potential of entire communities. In the United States, Black and Latino youth are more than twice as likely to be suspended from school compared to their white peers, contributing to the school-to-prison pipeline and long-term negative outcomes. And this is according to the United States Department of Education. So when I thought about that, I was like, look, what could be a few good impactful quotes that I could share with the world about like why it matters and why we need to pay attention to this issue of inequities, right? So Black and Hispanic youth are more than twice as likely. And we all know that as people of color on this call, people not of color on this call, we often see how when it comes to law and the judicial system, or I say the injustice system, right? We see how our youth are always stigmatized or set up or put in a way to where it's unhealthy for them or made to feel in a way that like they're supposed to be marginalized and victimized or penalized or treated like we're just hardened criminals or we're animals. I'm here to say it matters because our children are not animals. We are not animals. We're people of color who, like I heard on the main speaker earlier, talk about like who don't need to be judged or stigmatized because of what people think about us, right? And we've got to think about like by the year of 2050, the youth of color will make up the majority of the United States population under 18, underscoring the critical need to create policies that support their growth and success today. So if we are to change the narrative and to help our youth grow and think better for their future, then we need to start looking at them differently. I heard somebody say earlier, it wasn't before I came to this presentation, about how when we see people of color, our youth of color, how we need to start complimenting them and encouraging them instead of stigmatizing them or making them feel bad about whatever their situation is or however they present, because, you know, assumptions can take a person a long way and it can really hurt and harm. And so I feel like as a person, as a woman of color, I feel like from my community, I feel like we were probably our own worst enemies in doing that. And so, you know, it takes a while for us to like wrap our brains around like the importance of not doing that anymore. Like I really and seriously, truly hope that we move to change the narrative around how we perceive our youth and how they, you know, when they express themselves. And instead of talking down to them or talking at them, but actually talking to them, right? And tell them how you look good today. I like your hair. I like your outfit. Oh, it's nice that the school you're talking about, or it's nice the trade that you want to take and things of that nature. I feel like it's super important that we help change the mindset for their psychological safety so that they can see the world as a better place and a better space and to have hope for the future. Next slide. So when I think about, when I looked up this research on this chart, just to still, no matter how we look at it, the rate of juveniles in residential treatments or in lockup or who have been adopted away, we've always been, people of color has always perpetuated the highest numbers in any of these phenomena, right? And so we want to be able to change the narrative of how this looks for us to suffer, or how our children suffer in jails and institutions. And so much of the work to address racial and ethnic disparities in the juvenile justice system has been driven by amendments to the Federal Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Act. So through the Federal Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Program, although some progress has been made, right, their overall involvement in the juvenile justice system has been decreasing nationally. Disparities continue to exist today, especially for Black and brown people in America and our youth today. So I want to show that if you look at the colors here, the the red represents the people of Black people, the purple represents the our American Indian or indigenous people, right? And then the green represents our Hispanic population, right? And so we have also here, we have our white and our Asian, but as you can see, our numbers are alarmingly always higher, no matter how much the narrative is supposed to be changing. We're still suffering at larger rates. Next slide. And so I would be remiss of my passion and the love that I do as a survivor of commercial sexual exploitation if I did not share the abuse to prison pipeline that I learned from and that I work alongside with Rights for Girls. Right. So for many years, I'll say for the last exact 10 years, I have the honor of working with women who've been trafficked, exploited, or prostituted. And I just need to say that it's not okay to tell our young girls that the only thing or the best thing for us to do for ourselves is to sell ourselves, is to sell sex or to present ourselves in a way that's probably unbecoming. I know for me, let me just speak for myself because I don't want to judge anyone and I don't want to spill my biases on anyone else. But I know that I was forced, frauded, and coerced into a way of life that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. And as a result, at the age of 14, I had some experiences like being locked up and locked away into prisons and jails here in Massachusetts. Because I was misinformed, I was naive, I wasn't aware of what was happening to me, and I really thought that I was doing what I wanted to do. When in fact, you can't make informed decisions at the age of 14. And so when I share about that and I think about what I learned from the movement of human trafficking and commercial sexual exploitation, I want to share that some of these statistics. So 84% of women who are incarcerated as girls have histories of child sexual abuse, 84% have histories of physical abuse, and 92% of histories of emotional abuse. And I was talking a little bit about that earlier, about the emotional abuse. That is just so horrible, and it started for me as a child coming from a dark background. And it just, that with people talking down to me as a little girl, telling me I think I'm fast, I think I'm grown, to me being taking on those harsh feelings and being defiant and being, acting out in ways that deep down in my soul, I really didn't want to. I want to be happy, joyous, and free. But at the time when I was growing up, more times than not, because it wasn't completely sad. It's not like I didn't have any family members who told me, who didn't say they love me. They did, but because we come from such a dysfunctional background, I got more despair than I got the love, and then when you become so consumed by the despair, that's eventually all you ever hear, right? So it was so damaging for me. So I'll just speak for myself, but I like to understand that part about myself before I go out into the community and I network and I share with a youth of color or women of color or anybody about the disparities they are experiencing, because it comes from somewhere. It's rooted from somewhere, So I just want to make sure that we understood, like as a child, because of the disparities that I had, it was easy for me to go right from all this abuse right to jail, right? So 80% of girls sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole have been physically abused, and 77% of the girls have been sexually abused. A disproportionate rate of these women are people of color. We always have the highest numbers in everything. Automatically, and when I say we, I mean women of color, girls of color. We're always like the highest numbers, and sometimes those numbers are either skewed or played down or what have you, because they don't really want folks to see the impact that this abuse and use is having on us. And so we need to bring about awareness to this so that we can try to make a difference in what is happening to us, right? Because I remember, like at 14, once they locked me up, I didn't have a problem with, like, by the time it was 14. So by the time I got 17, they sent me to MCI Framingham. Well, I didn't have no business in MCI Framingham, but because of the way the laws were stacked against me, I wound up doing 6 months in the jailhouse with full-grown women who were with other people who had fallen on hard times. And so I just want to bring about awareness to that, and that how it happens to us more than others, you know. So when I talk about us, I'm talking about women of color. I identify as a woman of color. So rates of sexual abuse are 4 times higher for girls and youth in the justice system than they are for boys, although genders are affected by sexual violence on a regular and ongoing basis. So this is just so horrible, right? This is the worst thing that a person could ever want to think about, you know. I remember growing up in a foster home because my mom was brutally murdered when I was a baby. And I can remember like my foster brother touching me and not wanting to be touched, or my foster uncles, you know, touching me and not wanting to be touched. And really from that moment on, you know, the trauma set in, and then I had a low self-worth and self-esteem. And so I really actually didn't even have any self-worth or care for myself, because I felt there was nobody there to protect me or to believe me when I wanted to talk about or tell when I was being touched, you know. And so we got to be careful to listen to our young youth when they talk about being spoke to in an inappropriate manner, touched in an inappropriate manner, hugged in an inappropriate manner, kissed. Because some people say, oh, it was an endearing kiss, but I know that my uncle's kiss wasn't endearing, and that would lead up to something later. So we need to be able to keep the doors in our minds open to when our youth come to us and they say, this didn't feel right, or this wasn't right. And so now there's ways that we can teach our children about good touch and bad touch. But I think we need to take it a little bit further in being able to let them know that if you share with me, if you have something to say to me, then I believe you, I hear you, I see you, and I want to help you, and I will protect you. Because for a long time, I know in my life, I knew that I couldn't say anything, because I feel like the police don't come on time, or that my parents wouldn't have listened to me. And so I was molested as a child for a lot of years because I was afraid to say anything. And no child, no person, nobody should ever have to sit in the second, third, and the fourth grade and feel uncomfortable about being touched in a sexual manner because of the fear of being shamed for it, being blamed for it, or not believed, or not being heard, right? And so that causes another whole, that form of trauma causes another whole impact for a person's life. And so we want to be careful to, when I do start sharing about something like that, pay attention to red flags and be willing to stay open and listen and try to help them with obtain best services to find some healing, relief, and some exit strategies. So with that, I want to talk about the dual system of the crossover youth involved in the injustice system, the child welfare system. This also contributes to a systemic inequities. So once a child is seen, or a youth is seen as a bad person, defiant, not wanting to listen, automatically want to lock them away and shut them down and not give them the services that they deserve or that they need. And I just feel like that's just a horrible disservice to our youth, and that we need to start opening up more to helping our youth grow from those disparities. Next slide. So this chart is about how the rate. This is a chart of the rates of the way our youth are marginalized or victimized into treatment or institutions and things of that nature. So if you look closely at this chart, it shows us that, again, most of our youth are in detention centers, right? Because of a lack of, I guess, services, or lack of folks not wanting to really dive deep into redirection or helping or other resources to help them stay away from detention centers, long-term secure facilities, residential treatments or group homes. So the way that we can get around that is to try to help our youth find different activities or resources, or help them with their education to move forward for the betterment of their life. This chart right here was very alarming to me, because I was like, you never really think about, and this is an old chart here. And so, when we think about the numbers and the way that we're marginalized, I would say that we definitely need, there's no equity here. There's definitely no equity here. And so if we are to help our youth gain some form of equity, we need to be able to change the narrative to charts that we see like this when they cross our path and our research and our work to change the narrative for our at-risk youth. Next slide. And so historical marginalization. So, Black youth have historically faced systemic barriers in education, with schools in predominantly Black neighborhoods receiving significantly less, leading to poorer educational outcomes and limited opportunities for advancement. Throughout history, Black youth have been disproportionately targeted by the criminal justice system, with Black children being 5 times more likely than white children to be incarcerated, perpetuating cycles of poverty and disenfranchisement. Effective policymaking must prioritize dismantling the structural inequalities that have historically marginalized Black youth, ensuring that their unique challenges are addressed through targeted and inclusive strategies. And by implementing equitable policies, we can significantly improve educational outcomes, reduce incarceration rates, and create pathways for Black youth to drive and contribute to a more just society. So here, this shows like historically, these pictures show historically how our youth have been treated, and the last picture here where it says vote and where we need to go, like we need to encourage our youth to register to vote and get out there and vote, and because it's important and that their voice does matter. And so if we don't pay attention to the historical marginalization of our people, then we are in trouble. We are in trouble. Our youth are in trouble, and there is no future for us. And so we need to definitely be cognizant of what's happening and to be ready to do something about this so that we can all move forward for the betterment of our life. Next slide. And so the key challenges, of course, when it comes to equity, right, is quality education, healthcare, safe housing, and equitable employment opportunities. Say that there's nothing wrong with us helping our youth get well jobs like McDonald's or Burger King and things of that nature. But I stand firmly on like encouraging them to get some formal education is not for everybody. Let's just keep that real. A formal education not for everybody. Even though I stand on my education and so late in my life, I realize that it's not for everybody. And so when we think about our youth and stuff and things of that nature, we want to encourage them to you don't have to go get a bachelor's and become a doctor or anything like that. But what have you ever aspired to do for your life? And what kind of hobbies do you like? And encourage them to take certificate programs or vocational programs, so they can start thinking about having doing something for the rest of their life that they enjoy. Because they say if you love what you do as work, you never worked a day in your life, right? So we want to be able to encourage them to get a quality education, no matter what that looks like for them. Because what it might look like for me or for you or someone else on this call, it will definitely not be the same for the youth that we encounter on a day-to-day basis. And so we want to be careful to allow them that freedom to be able to get a quality education as they see fit. So I'm looking at the questions. It says here, are we able to ask questions in the space? Of course you can. And so let me just, and I'll answer according to how you ask the questions. And so we're going to continue. I'm a little nervous. I'm usually not, but okay. So we want to move that, which moves us over to healthcare. A lot of times healthcare, one of the biggest flags for me when I encounter youth or when I encounter the women that I walk alongside on Mass and Cass here in Massachusetts, which is it's like a street. It's got another nickname they call Mass and Cass, but it's a place where you have active addicts and alcoholics walking up and down the street shooting drugs, smoking crack, prostituting, robbing, stealing, and all the things here. It's horrible here. And so what I do is I walk alongside women who experience the kind of commercial sexual exploitation and yes, Skid Row, if you will. Yes, it is. And what I do is when I get out there and I have a talk with them, or when I give them like bags of hope, or care bags, I try to keep like backpacks in my trunk for changes of clothes, things to clean up with, sanitary napkins, bus passes, coffee cards, and things of that nature. When I talk with them, I always encourage them to try to seek some kind of, not just emergency room care, but some kind of health care. And a lot of times lately, because of the way that Massachusetts, I feel like the people on the streets are becoming younger and younger. Before, I felt like it was middle age to upper age, but nowadays it's really it could be anywhere from 15, 16 and up that you'll see these people on the street, and it just breaks my heart because I'm like, what are we coming to? What is our world coming to, right? So we got to do better by our people and making sure that they help that they understand the importance of healthcare. Safe housing is the biggest issue that we'll ever have for people who are marginalized and vulnerable, right? Safe housing, every time we turn around, there's never any space or place for them to go. There's never any place, there's never any shelters or safe, places for them to go like immediately. And if there are, I've always had people share with me how dangerous those shelters and places and spaces are. So hopefully, sooner than later, we'll get to having places that we can help folks get safe housing and long-term housing. Because a lot of times, even if they do get to like a safe house or maybe a halfway house or sober house, those things get time constrictions on those. And so we want to be sure to try to help them get safe and sober housing or safe housing, however they see fit in the long scheme of things, right? So, and equitable employment opportunities, like I was speaking about that earlier, I had to let them know that definitely it's nothing wrong, because I had, what comes to my mind is I had this beautiful young lady, and she was like, I'm not working unless I can do this job. I said, well, how long have you been in the job? How long have you been out of work? And she was like, oh, I haven't worked in 2 years. I said, well, it sounds like to me, we got to kind of start all over, and we got to start from somewhere. So maybe if we start over here then maybe we get some training or keep filling out applications and upgrade your resume, and maybe get back to, other employers who will help you get back into to the work that you aspire to do. But for right now, I want to help you get your foot in the door somewhere, but also always encouraging her to make sure that she finds equitable employment opportunities to where she can get to a level that's fit for her life. And so, yeah, I'm always encouraging folks to do better if they want to, or get to a place and space in their life where they feel comfortable enough to live and thrive. And so it says here, I'm looking at in the chat, it says, I worked in the office of Mass Ave for a decade, and it was so heartbreaking to see how much younger and younger the part. Yes, the part is alarming. And I'm New York City, thanks for the shelters. The shelters everywhere are dangerous. People rather live on the streets. Yeah, that is true. That is true. And so we want to be able to change the narrative to that for our youth, because do we want our future to look like we're happy with being impoverished? I don't think so. And so we want to get to the barriers, right? And the barriers to participation is civic and political participation, including voter representation and social stigma. So a way to do that, I'm always encouraging anybody I know, it don't matter if you're a youth or not, no matter who you are, I say that our vote matters. Because if it didn't matter, they wouldn't be trying to talk us out of voting. So everybody's vote matters. So if you have a chance to vote, make sure you do that. And if you have a chance to encourage somebody and help them register to vote, do that. I do that. Next slide. And so strategies for policy change include speaking the language of the youth, because it encourages real relationships of trust, dignity, and respect. And we're talking to somebody and they don't understand the language, and we're not meeting them where they're at, and we're not able to understand some of their jargon, then we lose them right away. Lose them immediately. Or if we're making faces or gestures or acting in a way that we feel like they're not good enough, or it's despicable, then we lose them right away. So we want to be careful to be able to have real relationships of trust and be your authentic self. I'm a little rough around the edges. I'm old school mama type, and the people that I work with, they love me because they know you did. What you see is me. And I'm not helping you if I don't keep it real with you and tell you the honest truth about whatever we're talking about or whatever we're working with, because it's important for me to be honest with you, and I'm not helping you if I'm not keeping it real with you, right? So we want to be able to practice inclusion of the youth, right? And community engagement. Involve youth of color in the communities and policy development. Teach them how to go down to the State House and to vote on laws, and to look up laws, and to understand where they stand in the system, right? To make a difference in that, and to stand on whatever they believe on, to make a difference in the world for themselves, because the future is theirs, and so we want to be able to encourage a brighter future for them by like bringing them into the system, to show them how show them how policy works. Advocacy and alliances, discuss the role of advocacy groups, partnerships, and coalitions in pushing for equitable policies. I stay at the State House here in Massachusetts, but I also go to Washington, D.C., and I vote and I testify on bills. I've been to Maine and other places because I believe in advocating for the rights of women who've been trafficked and exploited, to change the narrative around that. I feel like we should not be criminalized. and we should not be, I don't really want to be victimized, but I want them to have it where they help us move to a mindset of survival and empowerment instead of saying, oh, I'm a victim, oh, this or that. No, we had some lived experiences. We don't like it, and we want some exit strategies and resources. And we think that our policymakers and our legislators and the law and our, should do that. Like they should, if we're paying taxes, about our people paying taxes, we should have the opportunity to change the narrative for what it looks like for us. And so let's just do that. And by doing that, we definitely need to have shared data-driven decisions making, using data to identify needs and measure the impact. So like when we show the charts or the scales or whatever we're showing, show it to them and show them and explain it to them. Because a lot of times they don't know what a pie chart is or a bar graph. They don't understand what that is. They don't understand the like the percentage rates to whatever is going on. So a lot of times I found that to be more impactful, and we can actually say, well, 90% of the people, that look like us have this experience. They're like, really, for word? I didn't know that. Yes, that's what's happening. So we want to change the narrative, and we don't want you to be one of the people who have to experience these hardships. And so I just want to be able to be a part of the change I want to see, if you will. Yeah, and so I'm kind of quoting somebody, but I stand on that. Next slide. And so, so some of the recommendations that I was able to think about is safe housing, support funding, education for marginalized youth, reform the juvenile justice system. We need to expand physical, mental health youth services, because mental health is real. And by encouraging our youth to go see a therapist or psychiatrist doesn't mean they got to take medication, doesn't mean that they're crazy. As pain shared is pain less than I tell them. And it doesn't mean that you're going to be put in this box and we're going to lock you away because you're struggling right now, because you might feel anxious, or you might feel depressed, or sometimes you might be hearing voices or seeing things, right? We want to get them to a place where we understand and help them deal with their situations in an appropriate manner, right? We also want to strengthen legal protection and law enforcement training, because a lot of time our law enforcement do not know how to approach our youth. Let me just say this. I sit on the best team in Boston, right? The mobile crisis unit. And trust me, I've been on a call or two where I've seen some things, or when I see law enforcement, I'm like, that is not the way we need to be engaging in our youth or addressing certain situations. We need to be more respectful and mindful. And so we need to get to a place. I'll advocate in a minute. I'll say, excuse me, is there somebody so-and-so? Do you have an advocate? Blah, blah, blah. Then, so I got to work on that. But because I'm so passionate in the work that I do, I feel like if we see something, we definitely need to say something, and so we need to have mandatory trainings for healthcare and law enforcement. We need to provide steps for how these policies can be effectively implemented and scaled. We need to have more public awareness and education campaigns. We need to promote educational programs in schools. We need to mentor and accompany youth. We need to have awareness, and we need to encourage ongoing community trainings and events. When I say promote educational programs in school, I've been to a couple of schools, right? And they were really offended that I wanted to do a workshop about commercial sexual exploitation. They really didn't want me to do that. And some of the children in the school, because I was out in the suburbs, let me just keep it honest, I wasn't really here in the hood and the Jeremiah Burks and the Dorchester High or the Madison Park. I went to the suburbs. I made a mistake by going to the suburbs to do a presentation about human trafficking and commercial sexual exploitation. And it wasn't the children, because we had a good time. We laughed, we played music, we danced. And I talked about like social media and all the icons that they praise, right? And I was talking about, we can talk about how Cardi B talks about money, but if you notice, she's doing all these things that she would never let culture and her other children do. So just think about that. Think about what that looks like and how you really want to, get your money. And like, I kind of really got a little graphic about like commercial sexual exploitation. And I believe if somebody would have told me at the age of 14, then I wouldn't have got turned out to the streets of Boston and up in traffic up and down the East Coast. So I feel like we need to be in these high schools and these middle schools, educating our youth about commercial sexual exploitation, human trafficking, and the things of that nature, because if we don't, we're doomed. And I forever will stand on that. So I usually volunteer my services because I want to be able to have workshops like this, not only with at-risk youth, but with our youth in general. Because like I said, I went to Boston Technical High. That's a school, a nice highfalutin school. You take a test to get into school. They never would want to talk about commercial sexual exploitation in our classes. That wasn't happening. And so if we don't educate our people, who will? And so I just encourage us to be able to do that and create some kind of workshops and groups around that so we can go bring about awareness to stop the narrative. Next slide. And so how to amplify youth and Black culture is by education, right? By any way they see fit, any way they like that, whether it be formal education, certificate programs, whatever, we want to be able to, knowledge, knowledge is power, no matter how they see fit, no matter how they want to do that. We want to participate, and we want to be participating in local events, anything that has to do with empowering our youth or people of color. We need to be there in full support, not hating, not comparing, not judging, not compromising, but being there and as our full self and full love and support. We want to support Black and brown businesses. I feel like we don't do that enough. If it's another business, we'll pay them whatever they ask. As soon as it's a Black and brown business, or we want to play let's make a deal. Well, this ain't Monty Hall. We need to we need to really start being serious about supporting one another, and possibly one day in this world build another Black Wall Street. How about that? And so we want to be able to visit and join cultural groups instead of having things just totally wrapped around like what we believe in and how we grew up and what we know as cultural background for a person of color. Look at all the people of color's cultural backgrounds, the Indian, Haitian, Hispanic. Let's look at everybody's cultural backgrounds and be able to go and help them celebrate as well as join, so we can learn about how what their culture entails, and how we can be a better community, right? We want to celebrate personal heritages. We want to promote inclusivity and respect. And we want to stay current and informed with the laws around how they affect us totally. Because we're in trouble. We don't stay informed with how the laws affect us, then we don't do nothing about it. And we fall victim to whatever they want to do to us. And I'm here to say that that is not equity. So we need to be able to do that in a way that we help change the narrative around what it looks like for our world in the future. Next slide. So in ways that we can continue to support that, and we need to support initiatives that address structural inequities by pushing for better education, affordable housing, and accessible healthcare for at-risk youth. We need to advocate for programs that provide mentorship, job training, and mental health support with organizations. We need to work with local communities to create and sustain safe environments and resources for young people so we can help reduce their harms. We need to participate in collaboration between government, nonprofits, and communities tackling issues that affect our youth effectively. So we definitely need to support. I can't say, I'll tell you, if we don't support, then we don't move forward for the betterment of all of our lives, right? So we want to be careful to be sure to support. Next slide. And so we need to, in order to support, we need to understand who the stakeholders are. So the stakeholders are our government, nonprofit and community organizations, and youth voices. So the government we need to be able to discuss the role of state and federal governments in creating and enforcing equitable policies. So we need to be able to, when things roll down the hill, if we want to start a bill or we want to start a policy, we need to be able to be in place to be able to show our youth how to create those things, to be a part of those things for the betterment of their life. As far as the nonprofits, we need to highlight these groups, how we can, and how they can support policy change through advocacy, education, and direct services. We need to always make sure that if it's about them, let them have a voice and a seat at the table. They need to make deliberate and repeat efforts to include youth of color in policy and discussion leadership roles. Always, 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 we should do that. Okay, next slide. And in conclusion, it is important to help our young people stay on track and provide them with support they need to think broadly about their future. Build on what works, when it works, and in those critical life-changing moments for the betterment of societies in the future. So we need to just definitely, no matter what, be able to support our youth for the betterment of their life and our future as a whole. And so I'm going to look back in the chat because I kind of got away from it and ask if you guys have any questions for me. It says here, absolutely, I believe we have a tendency to do things the way they have traditionally been done. It could be a result. This is Robert. The result of generational trauma. That's true. We need to understand where our attitudes and values originate and why we have the beliefs that we have. It's just, which is true. And so that's why it's important for us to address childhood trauma. Like I was talking about earlier in my presentation, right? If somebody would have told me when I was younger, or somebody would listen to me when I was younger, then maybe the narrative would have changed for my life over the span up until today. But I'm not mad about anything I've gone through today because it's made me a better or different person. But I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. And so in order to help and change the narrative for our youth and for the people coming behind us, right? I want to be able to get out there and get ahead of it and do some harm reduction and do some interventions and be able to share with them about like how we can change the narrative and how we can move forward better as a people. And so with that, I just want to say next slide. Thank you.